moments, because everybody has moments of clarity. I think you just start growing up. Now, when I was younger, I was always interested in anything that had to do with higher consciousness. It could be the I Ching, it could be tarot cards, it could be Saint Teresa, it could be Alan Watts, it could be Ram Dass, it could be Saint Thomas of Aquinas. If it was exoteric, it was esoteric. I just was always fascinated in anything like that. And in my generation, like in college, you read Ram Dass and Alan Watts, all this philosophical stuff in the morning, and then you went to Vietnam anti-war protests in the afternoon. At that time, it was the counterculture. It was everything. It was sexual, it was musical, it was cultural, it was relational, and it was political. It wasn't, people didn't have their lanes. It was just a sense of newness. So for me, the part of it that was most fascinating was the philosophical and the religious ideas, but I didn't know how to apply them to my life in any meaningful way. So I just couldn't, they were abstractions to me that I didn't seem to really help with my love life or my body or whatever. So when I was in my mid-20s living here in New York City, I picked up a book on a coffee table called A Course in Miracles. Now, the Course doesn't claim to have any monopoly on truth. I think there's one truth spoken many different ways, secular, religious, spiritual. So the Course doesn't aim at a monopoly on truth. But for me, it was the key, I get how to practice it. Because before that, I hadn't realized it doesn't mean anything unless you're loving the person in front of you. It doesn't mean anything unless you're thinking with love and forgiveness. So none of the other stuff's going to work. And then that just opened up a world of possibilities.
Have you found after all your practices that to still be the foundation? You have to love yourself. You have to practice forgiveness. Are those still the pillars?
Well, this business you just said, love yourself. I do remind you that Jesus didn't come to earth to say, love yourself. He said, love one another. So yes, we have to have healthy self-esteem. We have to have healthy self-care. But, some of this love yourself craze is like, I'm concerned with some of it these days. I think some of what people call self-care, in my day, we call selfishness. Self-care, yes, your own healthy boundaries, taking care of food, sleep, exercise, and so forth. But living for yourself is not the key here. Living for others is where you find yourself. There's a line in the Course in Miracles where it says, do not look to yourself to find yourself, for that is not where you are.
It's funny, we were with Bill Maher of all people recently, and I was telling him while we were doing the show together that in a weird way, Lauren and I were on the cusp of one of the last generations to grow up going through school and college, which are formidable years, without smartphones and without technology.
Right.
So in a strange way, even though we're younger in age to the generations beneath us, we maybe relate more to the generations above us because we were like one of the last generations to grow up without this kind of technology.
Right.
And one of the things we do on this show is we have people from all walks of life and all different opinions and political spectrums.
Cool.
And as you can imagine, especially this day and age, we will catch flack for doing that. Like I just read a comment earlier and they said, oh, this is a safe space for this kind of political thought, or this is, and what I didn't respond, but what I wanted to respond was, no, this is a safe space for diversity of opinion.
Thank you. And this is so huge today. People have become so siloed. We've got to come out of our silos on every level. Your ethnicity, your religion, your sex, your sexuality, your politics. Enough with only talking to people that will agree with you. Oh, and there's this
it's a fragility because you're scared to have
absolutely
disagreement.
Fragility. And it creates a smug self-righteousness on both sides of the political aisle.
Well, the easiest way,
so right.
If you believe you're on the righteous side, it's the easiest way to disregard the facts around you. Meaning, if I feel like I'm doing the quote unquote right thing, and I'm not picking any political side, but if I just feel I'm doing the right thing, then I'm able to negate and disregard a lot of facts and opinions around me because I'm on the right side. Does that make sense?
Right. And that's self-righteousness. There's a difference between righteousness and self-righteousness. First of all, no one has a monopoly on the truth. If you think you don't have to learn anything, then you're really ignorant of what life is about. And people don't owe it to you to agree with you. I see this so much. I was at a dinner the other night, and my politics are more left, and these people, their politics were more right. And it was a really fun dinner party. And everybody was yelling and screaming, but in a really good way. Yep. And it was really actually a wonderful party. Everybody was having a good time at the table. And then at one point, one of the men said, well, which one is right? I said, we're both right. We're both right, and this country doesn't belong to it belongs to all of us, and we all get to be right. You know, Eisenhower said, the American mind at its best is both liberal and conservative. There are high-minded conservative principles. There are high-minded liberal principles.
How come more people don't understand that you can have two ideas at the same time and two thoughts that are opposing sometimes?
What you're saying, you know, we have to rethink everything.
Agreed.
Everything. We are rethinking politics. We're rethinking business. We're rethinking medicine. We're rethinking food. We're rethinking science. We're rethinking education. We're rethinking, everything. Rethinking religion and spirituality. And there's an evolutionary leap that we need to take, which has to do with the discomfort of knowing that sometimes there are juxtaposing views, and we have to hold all of them with love and compassion.
We've done this show for close to a decade. Imagine the audience that would exist and how boring the show would be if all we talked about was some thought pattern that leaned a specific way all the time, over and over and over. And for me, I'm like, how do you actually then get an informed view of the world?
That's wrong. That's what's wrong with the world today.
Mm-hmm.
That is what's wrong. And that's why, like I said, we used to have a Walter Cronkite. You now have Fox, which is not in all cases, but in most cases, sort of the mouthpiece for the Republican Party.
Sure.
You have MSNBC, which is most cases mouthpiece for the Democratic Party, and CNN leaning that way. That's kind of like dangerous.
Well, it's interesting doing this type of work where we've done it for a long time, but I would say in the last few years, definitely COVID and since, there is this like pushback and this aggression if you even have somebody on that leans a specific political way. Like it's not even what did they say or what was the idea discussed. It's I can't believe this person would be on this platform.
It's so horrifying unless they are a genuine hater.
Sure.
And I'm assuming we're not talking about Jen, because there are some serious haters out there. But somebody who just doesn't see it your way or is bringing up a different view, it's terrible. This is what council culture is. These days, it's not only do you have to agree with me, you have to say it the way I say it. You have to use the words and the phrases the way I don't. And if you don't, you need to shut up.
I think
you need to shut up.
You look at it like what you just said is like the dinner party. I don't want to go to a dinner party where everyone agrees with me. That sounds like a real boring dinner party. I want dinner parties that have eclectic conversations and color and depth and other opinions. I don't understand this thing where we have to all consume the content that we agree with.
Well, it's interesting because the night before the dinner party that I described, that was fun, even though I think I was the only lefty there, but it was fun actually. The night before, I was with people who I think had the same political views as I. I was probably more left than they were. But the problem was Americans are losing our capacity for critical thought.
Yes.
And we're not feeling permission. And that's what I found at the other dinner party. People weren't feeling, and I reminded a few people, like, maybe we should be thinking about this. Maybe we should be thinking about that. Maybe we should. And then it was almost like somebody needed to give permission to the table. And these were all intelligent people, high achieving people, but everybody's afraid to talk today. And also, it's not just in some situations not afraid to talk, but in way too many cases saying what my political silo says I'm supposed to feel about this.
Right. It's like almost you've been robotically programmed.
And if you suggest anything that might be different, yeah, we got to break free. Well, and the only way we can break free is in our own minds. Read books. We have to go back to reading books. Well,
that's the hard, I personally love to read a lot of history.
Me too.
Right, that's like my favorite thing. And you
guys will have to exchange books. I can't wait to.
Do you read American history much?
I do, yeah.
Doris Kearns Goodwin?
Yeah, I love it.
So did you read her
Team
new one?
Rivals and Leadership?
Yes, and her last one is called An Unfinished Love Story.
I've not read that one yet.
Oh my God, and the one on Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt, A No Ordinary Time?
I've read Team of Rivals and Leadership, but I have not read those two, but I'm aware of them.
Oh, you gotta read them. She's recommending them.
They'll blow your mind.
But I guess like somebody, again, like if you read history, you start to realize like how fragile society actually can be when people start to think this way, where they can't tolerate different ideas. And it's not to be an alarmist, but you have to be able to hold opposing views and ideas. Like I run companies, and imagine if I ran a company where the only thing we did were my ideas and I never listened to anyone else about their ideas.
You wouldn't have a successful company.
Of course not.
And also, there's the issue of there are at least 11 states in the United States that do not require even half a year of American history, American government, or American civics. A lot of it is just pure ignorance of where this country came from. And what you have, there are these two major categories in the United States that I notice that both scare me in a way. Scare me is to concern me. Sure. People who only want to talk about what America has done right, and they have no listening, and we cannot talk about the shadows, and we cannot talk about any of the we weren't always the good guys, no listening for that. But then there's another group equally unbalanced. They only want to talk about what America has done wrong. They have no listening for anything we've ever done right, no listening for the historical realities that are in fact a lot to be proud of and to build on, and even think it's awful to even say that. And I just think I think so many are yearning. That's what I saw when I ran for president. The people are not the problem. I mean, it's what's going on in the system, in the political system, in the media system, and online. But when I would actually be talking to audiences so many times, people on the right, people on the left, people who voted for Trump, people who voted for Bernie, who I think are craving, could we have a deeper conversation now about what's really happening and about our profound responsibility at this time in history, and not think only in terms of who's Democrat, who's Republican, who's for Jill, who's for Cornell, what do you think about Bobby? What do you, who's liberal, who's conservative, who's progressive? We just have to have an American conversation.
One of the main signs of intelligence is flexibility of the mind.
Yes.
And I think we've lost the flexibility of the mind. You just mentioned that you ran for president, which is huge undertaking.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to do that, and what was that like?
Well, I think a lot of why I wanted to do it is much like the conversation that we've been having here.